Well, good evening, everybody. And I know we took a 1 week hiatus from the channel, but I'm very excited to be back again. I'm looking forward to another great Q&A session. But before I do that, you're probably wondering, where are we broadcasting from today? So where we are today is we are at the Peppermint Restaurant in Avon. Being from Michigan, it sounds like Avon, but apparently New Yorkers pronounce it a little bit differently. We're in Avon. And Chrisanthi Hatekelkidis is here. Chris is somewhere in the background, her husband Chris. But first off, Chrisanthi, I want to thank you very much for offering up the hospitality. We just had an absolutely great dinner. I had one of my favorite foods of all time. I had jambalaya. Also, we had some pretzels, which was really great. So tell me something about the restaurant, because this is the first time that I've been here. So
well, thank you for coming. We really enjoyed our dinner tonight with everybody. We met some great new people. And about the restaurant, we're just your typical Greek diner, I guess you could say. We've got great people that work here. We enjoy our customers. We have a huge menu.
Yes, yes, you do. You do have a huge menu.
I guess it works for us.
So now, how long has Peppermint's been open?
Probably forever, right? What, since the 70s?
Since the 80s.
80s, since the 80s. Yeah, it was back in before Crisanti, so.
Oh, okay.
Before me, but yeah.
Awesome. So again, we just wanted to thank you very much for, like I said, offering up your hospitality, you and Chris. So and it looks like, when I first came in here, it looks like business is starting to pick back up again. Yeah. So hopefully that's a good sign for you guys.
Wanting to get out and, being careful, of course, and doing the right thing. But, we're social creatures. Everybody wants to get out and start seeing people again in a very responsible way.
Absolutely. So Chrisanthi, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, too. Looking forward to the session.
Thanks. And remember, if you have a question, type it in and ask us.
Yep.
You get special privileges.
Oh, thank you. Sounds great to me.
So we're going to bring Marissa back. So welcome back, Marissa. It's
Hello,
nice to
everyone.
see you again. So before we get started, though, Whiskey of the Week. So today we've got one of my favorites, Connemara, which is a Irish peated whiskey, which is a favorite of mine. Very light peat, not a really heavy peat. And Connemara got a very, very nice price point, so easily within what is affordable. So are you going to have a quick sip with me before we start?
Yeah, sure.
All right. As they say, in Ireland, it's sláinte.
Sláinte.
You should point out that we're not sponsored by the whiskey.
And we are, yes, we are not sponsored by the whiskey.
Well, we're welcome to it.
But Presbytera also, who is our whiskey ambassador, has also asked for a slight pour. So Presbytera, here's a dram for you. You have to come on camera.
No, that's okay. I'll just reach in. Thank you.
All right.
We got out of it.
Okay, so I think we're ready to get started then.
Yeah.
So what's our questions for today?
So it seems we already have 3 questions or 3 statements in the chat. And all are from Nick Carvelas. So Nick says, "Hello, Father. Thank you
Hi, Nick.
for the information and inspiration that you provide for us. I have a question. As Orthodox Christians, should love our fellow neighbors. As Christians, are we expected to accept people's lifestyles such as homosexuality? What advice do you have to prevent ourselves from judging that and other lifestyles?" Second question. In heaven, do you believe that we will have questions to ask the Lord, or will be divine enough to have the answers? Let's start with the first one, right? So I
was going to start with the easy one. Let me start with the second one first.
Oh.
Okay, so obviously nobody knows what is going to happen afterwards. Okay, but at least according to what would be mainstream Orthodox theology, the idea in heaven is that there is growth that continues. So although we receive our perfected bodies, we don't necessarily, and again, I'm saying mainstream Orthodox theology, I'm not saying this is actually what's going to happen, but that there is room for growth in our nous, our mind and heart connection. And we use one of the pieces of scripture, which is Jesus Christ talks about, and do you not know that my Father has prepared many mansions? And so there are certain people who are living right now, like those monks that are in our monasteries, and they, they have achieved a certain illumination, just as Jesus illuminated his apostles, but there are others who he said have ears and cannot hear. So what we think is that there will be different levels of growth. So are there questions that we would be asking of God? We absolutely believe that's possible. And that just as we are here, different people are going to have different levels of knowledge. We don't think necessarily that all of a sudden we'll be like super brainiacs when we get there.
So it's not like you show up in heaven and then suddenly you know a bunch of mysteries of the world.
Right, and you know who shot JFK, and you know who's behind the grassy knoll.
Yeah.
Right, that's you don't know about that. So now, read the first question again because I want to make sure I get it right.
Yeah, of course. Effectively, I'm going to summarize what Nick is saying here, in that as Orthodox Christians, we need to love each other and love our fellow neighbors, right? But as Christians in general, are we expected to accept people who have lifestyles that we don't necessarily partake in, like homosexuality, for instance? And like, if that's the case, what advice might you have to prevent ourselves from judging others, or like, what does it take? What should be our take of people who participate in different lifestyles? So
let's make that, as Orthodoxy always does, let's make that a much more generalized question. Okay, judge not lest ye be judged. And as Jesus Christ says, before you judge, remove the log that is in your eye. Right, meaning that you are also exist in sin. Again, we don't have that idea that you're a worthless person and that you're mired in sin, and we don't have any of that. We believe that we are essentially good, but in a fallen world we have this, we have inclination. All right, so the first part is that we are not here to judge. All right, we are here to live our lives and to do what Christ said, which is to love one another. Now, let's step away now from acceptance of, let's say, the gay community, and let's talk about something even closer to home. If I know that somebody is fooling around on their wife or husband, right?
Oh, cheating?
Cheating, okay. Then certainly this is against a Christian ideal.
Yeah.
All right? If now somebody is not yet divorced and they are now and they are having relationships with another person, that is outside of our Christian context. Do we normally go up to that person and say, "Oh, I know that you're cheating with that person and you shouldn't do that"? So we can't be hypocrites either. On one hand, we have certain expressions of Christianity that say, "Oh, the gay people got to speak out against them," but they won't speak out against divorce. They won't speak out against abortion. They won't speak out against a lot of the other common things that are happening. So, in that sense, if you're going to speak out, then you can't be a hypocrite. Then you have to speak out against all those things that are antithetical to Christianity. Now, in this case, I'm not saying that a gay lifestyle is antithetical to Orthodoxy, because we are called to love one another. How they live their lives is between themselves and God. And if they come to me and they ask me a question and they say, now, this is my situation, then I can be friends. I can be with them just as I would be with that divorced person or that person that cheats. Okay, maybe I'm not their best friend, and I do not have to accept their condition. So just because they're fooling around doesn't mean that I say I accept that and I think that's right. So, and it's the same way then with an alternate lifestyle. Whatever that alternate lifestyle is, that may not be something that I accept, but in love, I see you as the whole person that you are. I don't know if that, Nick, does that help? I'm hoping that.
I think it does. So are you saying effectively, right, well, I want to kind of ask more about this whole notion of like accepting, right? And is there a difference in accepting, in this case, someone as who they are? Like, I accept and love you for who you are, but I don't necessarily accept your lifestyle as the truth with a capital T.
I think what some people have mostly Christians have said is love the sinner, hate the sin. Mm-hmm. I've heard that. I don't know if I necessarily would agree with that statement, but what we are called to do is to love one another as Jesus Christ loves us. That's what we were called to do. So in that sense, Jesus did not say that we had to like one another. And I'm sure, just like me, there are certain people that, you don't hate them, but you would prefer not to be around them. They're just not your bag, right? To use a old term there. So in that sense, you don't not love them, but that's not what is appropriate for you, let's say, or something that you're not comfortable with. And in Christianity, we don't have any struggle with that. So we don't have to accept it, but we do have to always be open to loving one another. That is the commandment that was given by Christ. And it was the last words of St. John in his gospel.
So going off of this, now I'm curious, can one be gay and Orthodox? Absolutely.
And we have plenty. In fact, we have gay priests. I mean, we do. Now the canons of the church say that does not impede you, but to have now a partner that you are active with, then that is not appropriate. As if you are a celibate priest, it would be inappropriate for you to have relations with a female, with a woman. Okay, so this is not about being gay. Yeah. This is about the fact that you have taken on a celibacy call.
Yeah.
If you engage in a sexual relationship, whether that's man and woman or man and man, it doesn't matter to the Orthodox Church. You have taken the vow of celibacy, and you have to follow through with that. So let's not make this about being gay.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to like priesthood, right? But any parishioner, and they could be gay, we shouldn't ostracize them from our church. They're part of our community. Yeah.
They're right. They are, and you said it just perfectly. They are part of our community. Yeah. Okay. Equally so, those people. The people have to be respectful of our total community. Okay, so the priest's role, one of the most important roles that the priest has, is to ensure how do I want to put this? The priest's role, or one of the priest's role, is to ensure that there is peace and harmony in the parish. Okay, so if there is a parishioner who knowingly incites animosity or incites antagonism, whoever that is, and for whatever reason they do that, then I have an obligation to the entire parish to speak to that element, to speak to that person, and say, if you do not cease and desist this activity, you cannot be part of our community. This is very biblical, because this is now what St. Paul told now the Thessalonians, and said, you have somebody among you who is sleeping now with his mother. You need to talk to that person, and either he has to stop that activity, or he has to then not be part of the community. So in that sense, you're absolutely right. Whoever comes to our community is welcomed and loved, but they also have to be respectful now of our entire community and what is good for that entire community.
What if, I'll move on to Spiro's question. I see you, Spiro. I want to keep talking about this. I'm sorry. But, what if it's the case that, the other way around? The community is not nice to this person.
Then that is my job to ensure that they understand that that is their commandment from God, that they need to be nice. So
how does
then
that work, though? What would that look like? You know, if you were in charge of this, like, how would that look like in practice?
Okay, so more than likely, probably the way that it would happen, and at least with my experience, is somebody would come to me and say, Father, did you know that this person is fooling around on his wife or husband? Father, do you know that this person is gay? And at that point, the priest's reaction is going to determine usually what that person will do. If the priest reacts and says, I can't believe this is happening in my parish, I'm going to speak to that person and we're going to take care of this, all right, then that would be an inappropriate reaction. My reaction needs to be, okay, first off, why are you telling me this? Are you telling me this for a reason, or are you telling me this so that I can begin to incite gossip? What is your reasoning? And most of the time, the motivation is of evil nature and not of good nature.
So do you feel obligated then, once you've uncovered what that nature is, to, if it is of like a evil or bad nature, guide that person to understanding where that's coming from?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. You know, normally what will happen with that is then I will take that, and most of the time I will turn that into a sermon. So let's say the person is gossiping, then I'll speak about gossiping. And the fascinating thing about this, and this has happened time and time again, something like that will come up, and then I will make a sermon about that. After liturgy is over, and I'm in the community hall, I'm not kidding you, 20 people will come up to me and say, Father, it sounded like you were talking about me. So then it exposes their feelings, right? So everyone feels a little guilty. So yes, that happens constantly. So it's important that once I uncover that's probably also an issue in the parish, and everybody needs to hear that, and I need to speak that.
Oh, it's so interesting. I want to hear more about that, but I don't want to leave
Spiro hanging, right?
Spiro hanging. Nice to see you again, Spiro.
Nick, great questions, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you. That needed to be discussed.
Yeah, so Spiro says and asks, some people believe that the COVID vaccine may have a chip in it, and link it to the mark of the beast in Revelations. What are your thoughts on this?
I am not a conspiracy theorist. So I am not discounting that either. I know that when I was in the military at boot camp, they had come to us and they said, we have an experimental program and we want to insert a chip in soldiers so that in case you die in battle and you are unrecognizable, that we can find out who you are through this chip.
Oh.
Made sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
More
99% of us rejected that and said, no, you're not putting a chip in me. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't in any way want to discount the possibility that could happen, all right? But I have no evidence to support that there are ulterior motives in developing the COVID vaccine. As a Christian who believes in the overarching good of humanity, I believe that there could be elements like that, but I believe that overall that would be discovered and the news would report it.
Yeah.
I just don't think you could keep that a secret. So for myself, I'm not worried about that. As far as the mark of the beast, we just have to be careful with that because there are many things that could look like the mark of the beast, but really aren't. Again, even Jesus Christ himself said that I do not know the time or the hour of the Father. Mm-hmm. So we need to spend less time worrying about when Christ is coming and spend more time loving one another.
Oh, I like that.
And worshiping our Lord.
Yeah. This kind of almost begs to ask, what does the church have a stance on vaccines in general? Like, for instance, like vaccines and vaccinations are kind of like a bit of a controversial topic, right? Like some people believe in not vaccinating their kids. Some people think it's like morally like bad to not vaccinate your kids. Like due to herd immunity. There's people who can't get vaccines. Like, does the church have a stance?
So the church's stance on everything is always begins with a question. What is your personal situation? Why do you not want the vaccine? Why do you want to become Orthodox? Why do you want this operation? Why do you want to marry this person? So the Orthodox Church is very, very hesitant to offer a generalized answer to anything because everybody's situation is personal unto themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, and as anybody that's been listening to this program knows, that the Orthodox Church in no way rejects science. We feel that science is the ongoing revelation of God. God allows us or reveals to us certain things, and through science we are able to then uncover more and more of who God is. So we have absolutely no issue with vaccine, okay? But we understand that if a mother or the parents are nervous that that particular vaccine could have an adverse effect on their child, then we would not in any way impede their decision to not vaccinate the child. That they are responsible for the care of their child. So we would not make a stand one way or the other and say, vaccine is good or vaccine is bad. What we will say is that science has shown that for the vast majority of cases, this vaccine proves effective. We would suggest that you take this vaccine. However, we'll have to generate a response for each individual case as it comes up.
So this seems to be like a pretty prominent kind of belief within Orthodoxy, or at least your takes of it, right? So it's almost as if like within this like realm of Christianity that it values nuance the most. You know,
nice way to put that. Yeah,
like nuance is like valued here, and like personal effect and experience, I guess.
And situation.
And
in situation, what is your environment? So I have to speak to where you are coming from, physically, emotionally, psychologically. I have to flush all of that out. So, and priests or bishops that make these generalized statements about this is wrong or that is wrong, I think that that's very damaging to human nature and to Christianity in general, because it negates the individuality of each person. Each person is unique in of themselves. We believe that they're the image and likeness of God, so they're not a robot, right?
Yeah, you could say God is multitudes, right? Moving on in the conversation, Anonymous asks, how does Greek Orthodoxy view the Book of Revelations?
Well, let's start that off by saying, it is the one book that we do not ever read during the liturgy.
Why? Let's start with that. Why?
Oh, why?
Yeah,
okay.
Why?
Anybody that has read the Book of Revelations and said they understand it is lying. Okay? Revelations is a very, very difficult book. So the Orthodox stance on that, well, one of the prevailing Orthodox positions is that John was writing about events that occurred at the time. He was writing about the fall of the Roman Empire. So there is a certain arm of Orthodoxy that believes that Revelation has happened already. All right, so that's one. The second, the other prevailing view is that this is then a prophecy of things to come, but it was written in such a cryptic way that it becomes obsessively evil, because people spend more time trying to decipher it than doing what they're supposed to be doing.
It's like a rabbit hole.
It is. It's a huge rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It's a huge and many theologies have emerged out of that. So you have millennialism, which is when will Christ return, the 1,000-year reign. Okay, you have people calculating numbers of when people will come back. Numerology becomes important. Signs become important. So remember remember what Jesus was always encountered by the Pharisees, and what did the Pharisees always say to Jesus? Show us a sign from heaven to prove that you are. And he said, you will see no sign from me. So Jesus was very strict on this idea that stop looking for signs and start doing what I'm telling you to do, which is love one another and love the Lord your God. See how I keep going back to this, but it is very satanic that to keep disappearing into Revelations. We begrudgingly acquiesced to accept it in the canon of the Bible. Okay, we did not want it.
Why do you think we eventually agreed to allow it in the canon?
There's a number of different reasons for that, but generally speaking, we for the harmony and the unity of the church at the time, we made the concession that it could be part of the canon of the Bible, but that we as the Orthodox Church would never read from it. So I think part of it was to the continued harmony of the universal church. We didn't want to make too fine a point on that and make that then another issue of controversy, or as they say in the UK, controversy.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Like I'm trying to think. I had a bunch of questions pop up while you were talking about that, and some of them floated away from me. But remember, was it a couple weeks ago we were kind of talking about spitballing ideas to talk about during these shows, and this kind of vaguely reminded me, that kind of the crypticness and symbolism or allegory that could come out of reading the book of Revelations, right? A lot of people might encounter very symbolic moments in their lives, right? Like, I don't know, you have a favorite song with someone that someone passes away, and after their funeral, that song, you hear it playing on the radio.
Right.
That kind of thing. Like, what is, like, does Orthodoxy have a take on that? Like, is that a sign? Or should we be thinking of that? Like, because based off of what you've just discussed, right? Stop focusing on signs, or...
Right.
Like, focus on loving each other. Like,
focus on what is our purpose. And again, if we claim that Jesus is the master teacher, right? Okay, then do what Jesus did. He taught, he healed. When he saw somebody in pain, he offered sympathy and comfort.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Orthodox Church continuously says, "Be Christ-like." Okay, so Christ did not make. I say that he didn't prophesize. He did prophesize about his upcoming passion, but that was for a specific purpose. Okay, but he railed and rebuked the Pharisees for their continuous pushing him for a sign. We want to see a sign, because what he saw is that looking for those signs distracted us from what our purpose is. Again, this is not to discount that we should not read. I'm not saying don't read Revelations. Please read Revelations, but every priest that I've talked to has a different interpretation of what Revelations mean. So all it tells me is that the church, in her wisdom, said, I agree with her, where she says it's a very difficult and complicated and cryptic book to read.
And because of that, it's dangerous? Would you say it's dangerous?
Dangerous only in the sense that you can become addicted to it like any other vice.
Okay.
It becomes addictive and it takes over your whole life. Harold Camp is the perfect example of that. I don't know if you all have heard about Harold Camp, but he was a gentleman where he spent the latter part of his years obsessively focused on predicting when Christ came. He made 3 predictions. Each one of those predictions turned out wrong, and before the 4th prediction could come, he died. Okay, so now he knows when Christ is coming. Okay,
yeah. So going in more on this conversation, Spiro contributes the question of, so the people who strongly believe that what we are living through today is written in Revelations. So, right, we have like a plague now, so to speak. Like a lot of the world is on fire in some sort of way. Are they totally wrong?
Jesus said, and you will have these events that will happen. So even Jesus told us that there will be signs that will come, but do not, I'm trying to think of the exact words, but do not put stock in those signs, for nobody knows. So he already told us to be aware of things like that.
Yeah.
Most people thought that with the rise of Nazi Germany and Hitler, they thought for sure now that is truly the Antichrist has come. Okay, and what happened? Nothing happened there. Genghis Khan. Okay,
Yeah.
he could have been the Antichrist, all right? Certainly Caligula and Nero could have been the Antichrist also. So we have had these all throughout history. In fact, so much so that St. Paul told us in his epistles, don't bother getting married. Christ is coming. So forget about getting married. There's no point. And what happened, right? He later on changed it. He changed his epistles and he said, okay, I would still say that you shouldn't get married, but some of you can't handle being a monastic, so go ahead and get married. So even he kind of softened his message after a while. All right. So there's always going to be signs.
They're like fire drills, in a way.
Well, what? So, but
Sorry, I thought that was funny. Anyway.
But let's take that up. If it's truly a fire drill, you know what you're training for, right? Okay, I mean, if you do a fire drill, right, that's the exit, this is the chair that I'm going to use to break the window, here's where the axe is, right? So you know what it is that you're going to do. Okay, this is not like a fire drill, because what are you prepared for? You don't even know what you're preparing for.
Yeah, no one knows, right? So just keep doing your thing, I guess.
So again, do what Jesus has commanded us to do.
Yeah.
And don't let it overtake you. Mm-hmm. Anything that takes you away or separates you from God is evil. Mm-hmm. And so reading Revelations and not understanding, but reading through it, there's nothing wrong with that. But obsessing over it and, is this a sign? Is COVID the sign? We've had pandemics and we've had flus. 1912, the Spanish flu, that could have been the end too. It turns out that it's not. So what we've learned through history is continue to support your fellow man.
So when Spiro asks, are these people totally wrong? Is your answer kind of like, it doesn't matter, just keep doing your thing?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that they're totally wrong, because I don't know when Christ is coming back.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, somebody's going to be right.
Yeah.
Right? At some point, somebody's going to be right. Yeah. So I don't want to call them crazy, but when nothing happens, then what do? Do I just give up and say, well, you know what? Jesus is not coming, so forget it. I'm going to do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah. Well, maybe we're getting obsessive over this discussion.
See, and now we're obsessing over.
Oh man. We'll move on. So Love asks, when I confess my sins, how specific do I need to be? And if I've committed a sin multiple times, do I need to mention the number of times I've committed the sin as well? So pretty much, I think they're asking, how the hell do I... Sorry, maybe I just sinned there. But how do I confess my sins? Right?
She just did it.
Yeah, she just did it. Okay, certainly I have to preface this with a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Right. Always talk to your priest. All right. That's a disclaimer. Talk to your priest. However, I'm gonna speak to the way that I was taught by my spiritual father, which is a way that makes absolute sense to me, and which then I can respect, and for my time as a priest has served me very well. He was never a list person. Sometimes you have people and they prepare a whole list of items, and then they come, and they say, here's all the things that I've done. Mm-hmm. And his comment, and in fact, I did that with him. Just a sidebar here, very quick. Traditionally, the night before your ordination, you are supposed to have your then confession with your spiritual father. So this is what I learned at school. They said, this is the tradition. So the night before my ordination, I was with my spiritual father. We were enjoying, imbibing some spirits. We were, and we were talking. And I said, I think I'm supposed to have a lifetime confession of all the sins that I've committed. And his answer to me was, I don't have that time. I don't have that amount of time, right? So enjoy your scotch and just drink. And what came out of that was, when you come to confession, you should confess what is hardest on your heart, what weighs most heavily on you, okay? Because that's what's holding you back. Okay, everybody drops a curse word every once in a while. Okay, everybody has a bad thought about every once in a while. Most people, have a side glance at somebody like that. Okay, I'm not saying that those are things that we're not interested in, but what confession is therapeutic. There is an absolution part of it, but a big part of it is therapeutic, meaning that I have something that's weighing heavily on my heart and I need to release that, and I need to know what the church says about this particular thing. And so that's the way that I was taught, and that's what I do. So if they come to me with a list, I say, hey, put the list down, and what are you most troubled about? And then that will take up the confession. And a lot of times, and I've got to say, a lot of times, if not most of the time, the things that they thought were sinful were not. And the things that they thought were okay were sinful. So for the vast majority of the confessions that I've done has been more of a teaching experience than a confessional. Because they are confessing things that are not sins. Which is fine, and they're learning. That's great. So I like that. But that's so the answer to the longer answer to the question is no. You don't need to then confess all of the multiple sins that you've done. You need to know what is it that is holding me back from developing a relationship with God and with my fellow man. Whether that's hate, gossip, envy, jealousy, addiction. Whatever those things are, that's what you want to confess, because there is that therapeutic portion of confession.
Do you have an example of like a case where someone, for one, so why should we call it confessions then if it's more of a teaching thing? Shouldn't we just call it like teachings?
No, they are confessing.
They are confessing to something, right?
They're confessing to what they think is a sin, and so the church is there to teach them that you are being unduly harsh on yourself, right? You can oftentimes be your own worst enemy, right? Okay. In fact, probably I would say the number one sin that is being committed is refusal to accept absolution from the priest. Meaning that they confess something, and then we talk it through. Okay, we understand what it is that you did, all right? And now what are you going to do about it, right? Because, there has to be repentance, right?
Yeah.
It's not just confession, it's repentance. Okay, and we work out what they will do to be better, okay? And then a month later, they'll come back and they'll confess the same thing. That's a sin. If you receive absolution, you can't hold on to that sin. That's a sin. So that's why confession has a teaching part of it, a component that is sometimes misunderstood.
Yeah.
And so a big part of what I do is help people get rid of unnecessary guilt. Gossip is guilt. You should be guilty of you should have feelings of guilt and shame for that because you're hurting somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay, but the fact that I'm trying to think of something. The fact that a woman lost her child during pregnancy. This is a dramatic and this is a heart-wrenching thing, okay? And so, I have had women that have come to me and then felt guilt and shame over that was something that was their fault. I have to release them from that guilt and say, no, this is not something that you did. I can't explain why it happened, but I can certainly tell you that it's not your fault. And they walk away then with at least something lifted off of them so that they can continue and be now this servant of God.
Yeah. So, an example of that would be like someone comes to you and confesses something like that, a miscarriage, but then turns out they're also gossiping or something. And
then I would spend more time on the gossiping than I would about. But it's equally important that they know that they should not feel guilty over the miscarriage, but they should feel guilty over the fact that they're gossiping.
Yeah.
So the church needs to help them be clear about what is right and what is wrong.
So, given that I had cursed a moment ago, Thamos says, in honor of Marissa, is hell a bad word?
No. I guess it's context, right? if you are saying it knowingly to people that would find that offensive, then it's wrong. Okay, so if let's say your friend is a mother of a small child, and it's just her thing that she doesn't want her small child to be around curse words, right? Okay, and during your conversations, right, you're talking to her and you say, you know what, I don't even know what the hell is going on here. The hell. Okay,
Yeah.
she would then rebuke you, which I would agree, and say, I don't think that language is appropriate. Us sitting here and you say, oh, what the hell's going on? Okay, then we shrug it off and it's fine. Now, if it becomes an addictive behavior, again, problematic, right?
Yeah.
Anything that is an addictive behavior is a problem for us as the Orthodox Church.
Yeah, so it's more so like a matter of respect and context.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Again,
Situation.
Valuing nuance. So, like, what about other curse words? Like, other curse words, all
Like-
others are
like
condemned.
F-bomb and-
Yeah.
You
Or
know-
say you're Australian and you throw other words around.
And again, we go back to the original first question, which was the idea of judging. I can tell you what Presbyterian and I have done in our lives. We have made it silently clear to our friends that we do not appreciate cursing in our presence.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't walk around and go, don't you dare curse in front of me, I'm walking out. We've never done that. But they never hear us curse. And what ends up happening is they become embarrassed when they curse.
Yeah,
And
I do.
And so their behavior has been altered in our presence. Not that we're trying to say that we're great, but we've made it amongst ourselves, the two of us, that we don't do that.
Yeah.
And we've never judged anybody for it. And I'm sure that when we leave, then they probably go back and curse and do whatever. But don't really care. But we have altered their behavior, by our silent witness, and that's who we are as Orthodox. That's what I love about Orthodoxy is we are the silent witness, and people will respond to that.
Yeah, I like that. I appreciate it. I think it's always important to value respect, what people's boundaries are and things like that. Christian says, "Hi, Father. My dad wanted to pose this question, but the question's not there yet. Please type the question." Old Gringo says, "Hello. I'm late, but here now."
Old Gringo.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
great name.
He's
Good.
been,
Great
he's been
name.
on a few times.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Jeff Abel says reconciliation, I guess going back on what we were talking about with regard to confession.
You should do a shout out. You're talking about bad words. We had a couple of videos on bad words.
Yeah.
Yes.
What are some of those videos about?
Yeah.
Is OMG a sin?
Oh, that's right. Is OMG a sin? And there was another one about.
I think the other one was just basically about profanity in general.
Yes, is profanity a sin or something like that? So yes, so look those up. We've got 2 videos on our YouTube channel that I elaborate on that a bit more. So what does Father Abel have to say? He's hiding himself back there.
Yeah.
Hey, Father Cristo, how you doing?
Yeah. Nothing else currently in the chat. So I guess this gives us some time to address a question that came up over dinner that actually you brought up.
Oh.
And I really hate that I'm bringing this up right now, but what is Orthodoxy's take on pornography?
Oh. Okay.
We're eating French dip sandwiches. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Where are you going with that?
Nowhere bad.
Okay, all right.
Wow.
Wow.
And
I'm just gonna be here awkwardly.
And just to give you a little bit of background context on where that came from, is that many times we as Christians are not prepared to adequately address questions that are asked of us. So I just brought up the question to to all the people that not to the restaurant, but to Chris, Crisanthi, Presbytera, Marissa, Demos, And I said, let me give you an example. Okay, what is wrong if somebody comes to you, or a teen or an adult, and says, what's wrong with pornography? Why is pornography bad? We have to give an answer for that. But the problem with today is that we are under pressure to give an intelligent and logical answer. Okay, an intelligent, logical answer is not what I heard when I was 3 years old. Well, because it's bad. That's not an intelligent, logical answer.
You
Okay?
know about pornography at 3? Sorry, I'm just making fun of you.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about it that way. Maybe, okay, when I was 9.
Okay, that's I guess a little bit better. Go on. Sorry to interrupt.
Well,
You're very advanced for your age.
Well, some of those neighborhoods in Brooklyn are a little rough, so you learn very
Grew
quickly.
a beard at 5.
That's right. Sounds like a Simpsons episode now.
Yeah. Oh Lord.
So a lot of times the answer is, well, the Bible says it's bad. God doesn't like it. Okay, these are not intelligent questions that today's generation can they don't understand the illogic of those types of things. So when we answer it, and we have to answer it in this intelligent fashion. So we, as Orthodoxy does, everything is relational. So there's it's not like we answer this way and then we answer that way. Everything is relational and it needs to be connected. So the issue that we have with pornography is the same issue that we have with video gaming. Right?
Elaborate.
All right. Anything that takes us away from those that the people that are around us, specifically our spouses, is considered a sinful act because it draws us away of who we should be facing. So we believe very strongly that the word that in the Bible, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, they continuously use the Greek word prosopo. Και το πρόσωπο αυτό. They talk about this idea of face, meaning that in order for me to engage you, I have to be looking at you and talk and engaged with you. Anything that draws my attention away from this human relationship, we believe in the Orthodox Church is sinful. That includes your phone. If I'm talking to you and you're constantly looking at the phone and looking at Facebook and not talking to me, that's irritating.
Yeah,
right?
it's pretty rude.
It's rude, it's disrespectful, and to some extent, it is disrespecting the image and likeness of God in me.
Yeah.
Or if I'm doing it to you, and that's the same thing with pornography or video gaming. Specifically with pornography, is that not only are you using an addictive behavior, but the people that you are looking at, you are objectifying, right? You are not looking at them as a human being. You are looking at them as serving a functional purpose for your pleasure.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that is not sacrificial love, right? That is narcissistic love, because I'm only concerned about myself. So this is why pornography is bad. It's very interesting that when I was at the seminary and I was at the library and I was going through books, I was looking up something, and what did I find in the seminary library? The proper use of sexual toys. There was a book written about how to properly use sexual toys.
Did you read it?
I'm taking the fifth. Taking the fifth on that. All right?
Uh-oh.
Okay. So
I could make some jokes here, I guess. Wouldn't you know, Terry? I'm sorry. Anyway, moving on. I'm embarrassing everyone. He's gonna yell at me. No. Okay. Go on. Sorry.
So what that tells us is that sex is not an anti-Christian behavior, but the objectification and the disrespecting of the image and likeness of God in that person, that is a sinful act.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. I guess maybe someone could say, in the scope of this, you're a feminist, Father A.
Oh, wow. Ooh. Oh, look at that. Okay.
Yeah. So, moving on to some of these other questions here. Spiro has another. Is it true that people in the Old Testament lived for 900 years?
Methuselah.
I would say that most, because Orthodoxy does not mandate that everything in the Bible must be taken literally. Remember, Orthodoxy looks at 4 different ways of the Bible. The Bible can be read literally, historically, allegorically, metaphorically. Those are the 4 ways. And so we have to look at context. For us, the idea of the years is more for the writer to say that they had an extremely long life, that they were blessed by God. So we don't focus on the year. I'm not saying that they didn't live, but it does not in any way affect our salvation to believe that that is a metaphor for a long life blessed by God. And just said in the way of 900 years, somebody would go, wow, that's really being blessed by God. As opposed to somebody that dies, very quickly within a couple of years.
Well, even like, in some respect, right? Like, we know Jesus' name. He's still alive. And in some respect, he is still alive because we know of him and know of his name.
Correct. Right.
Right?
And that would be a literal interpretation, right? Because we truly believe that Jesus Christ is, not was, but is.
Yeah. So moving on, because we have 9 minutes until 8, and I want to give these questions justice. Oh, is it a question? Agee asks, did you guys see the church that they discovered in Constantinople under a privately owned business? It was on Google homepage today.
Ah.
Yeah, it was the Greek church.
Oh,
Sultan,
wow.
it was I think Terry just handed it to you, but it's
Yeah.
historical Sultan Hamid area. They discovered a church and Mosaics.
And Mosaics in Turkey?
Yes.
Yeah, and
Constantinople.
In Constantinople. Well, they're the latest, unfortunately, controversy now in Constantinople is that Erdogan wants to return that to a mosque, and certainly that is creating a lot of fervor, creating a lot of fervor there. So it seems like Turkey's really in the news today.
Yeah. Oh, yikes.
And that's not surprising because, again, that area of Turkey was the Byzantine Empire. You would expect that there would be quite a few churches being built in those areas.
Yeah, that is super cool. Moving on in the questions. Old Gringo comes back with, off topic, but I had not gone to any church in over 8 years. The last church I had attended over 8 years ago was a Roman Catholic church in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Woo, I love ABQ. Orthodoxy, long story, brought me back.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Yeah. KRD 1129 says, God bless, Father. I have a question. Why doesn't the Orthodox Church teach about the end of times more? I've never heard Revelation and the end times prophecies read in church or anywhere. Thank you, smiley face. We kind of talked about this, but maybe re-emphasize.
Right. It is Orthodox canon law that at no time during a service are we allowed to read from Revelation. As I mentioned earlier, we acquiesced to the Roman Catholic Church that we would include Revelation in the canon of the Bible, but our condition was that it would never be read in a church setting. That doesn't mean that we can't speak about it or that we can't preach on it, but we have to be very cautious because, as I mentioned earlier, you can become addicted to it, and unless you are schooled very well, you can lead people down some very dangerous paths.
Yeah.
Does that and you can probably rephrase this in case anybody can't hear me. Does that include Jesus' famous line, "I am the Alpha and Omega"?
Well, yes. So what Demos said is Jesus did refer to himself as the Alpha and the Omega. What he is saying there is that as the Alpha, the first letter of the Greek alphabet, he was there at the beginning with God the Father at the beginning of time. Mm-hmm. And he will be with God the Father at the end times. So that's all that he was saying there, was so that people understand that he was he was somebody as God who entered into time, right? So now physics major appreciate this, right? So we believe now that God the Father, the Holy Spirit, and Christ live outside or exist outside of time. So they were there, they existed before time began. So God brings time into existence. And God and the form in the hypostasis of Jesus Christ enters into historical time for a time and then returns outside of time.
Is that why God created the DeLorean?
Ah, good point. Good point. In fact, if you read Revelation correctly, you can see the flux capacitor actually in Revelations.
So 1955 is the mark of the beast.
Well, as long as it's not 1977, the year I graduated, then we're okay.
Oh my god. Sorry. Sing.
And we're off track.
So any other thoughts before we wrap up? Oh wait, Father Eagle says, not correct. The divine liturgy is absolutely, oh, that's a word, eschatological.
Eschatological.
Sorry. He says, "Blessed is the kingdom of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit." Now
Opening line of the line of the liturgy, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and Father Chris is right. Is that we do believe that the divine liturgy exists outside of time, which is why it is the only service that is not, quote unquote, nailed to a particular time. An orthros, a matin service, must be done in the morning. A vesper service must be done at night. A compline is done, is done at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Liturgy, because it exists out of time, there's no place where it must occur. It doesn't have to occur in the morning, doesn't have to occur in the evening. He is right. It does exist outside of time. Mm-hmm. So for that brief moment when I say, "Blessed is the kingdom of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit," then we do believe that as we commune with God, that we exist out of time. Mm. I mean, that's what move.
He does say, by the way, I agree with Father A, the church teaches, I'm not saying that word again, such as the divine liturgy.
So eschatological, again, the word eschato in Greek is the end. Okay, mm-hmm. So it is the study of the end times.
Mm-hmm. We only have 3 minutes,
okay.
But Robin has a important question. They say, "Hey, Father." Oh, sorry. I'm wondering what marital advice you can offer when spouses feel like they are in different places spiritually. Do we encourage one another, and how so?
Wow. So obviously we'd have to know more about that particular situation, but yeah. I think at the core of this is what St. Paul said. Do you not know that the unbelieving spouse is the unbelieving husband is saved through the spouse? What he's meaning to say is that you are there for one another's salvation in marriage, and so that absolutely you can help one another to grow spiritually. All right. St. Paul also said that you should not be unevenly yoked. So there may exist a time when that spiritual divide becomes too great, and that spiritual divide cannot be healed. All right. And unfortunately that ends in divorce. I'm not saying that here, but what I'm saying is absolutely that it is the obligation of each spouse, partner, to help each one spiritually grow. That's why we consider marriage to be a sacrificial love, yeah, and not just love.
Yeah.
Because you must recognize when you need to sacrifice yourself for the good of the other, mm-hmm, and then obviously then vice versa. So what I would say is that when you have spiritual difficulties or spiritual unevenness, then part of your sacrifice may be to find out how to engage your partner at whatever spiritual level they're at and then build them up. You don't ever want to look down on their spirituality, mm-hmm, meaning that here I am, the spiritual giant, and let me teach you and bring you up.
Yeah.
The better way to do it is that you are at their spiritual level and then you grow together.
Yeah. Huh. That's nice. And I guess on that note, we can wrap it up. And any final words?
Wow. Well, it looks like we had a full array of questions. These questions were each session seems to be like a different kind of take. I mean, this theme tonight was a little bit different.
Revelations.
Tonight was revelation heavy. I would one of the things that I'm looking at doing here at the Annunciation in Rochester, which I did in Flint and was very well received, is one of the professors at our seminary is a
Father Abel
can't see.
wanted a close up of that.
Oh, okay. Yes, Connemara, one of the best.
Looks good.
Oh shoot, where? So I brought in a professor of theological studies, and her specialty was the Book of Revelations.
Oh wow!
So I don't feel in any way competent enough to discuss Revelation. I've read it. I am very confused by it. So I would never take that on. But bringing her in and having her discuss it was very, very illuminating and very enlightening. And so once kind of all this pandemic is over, I'd like to invite her in for that lecture series for her to speak on that.
That sounds cool.
And we'd obviously, Demos, we'd broadcast that. So you'd have the opportunity to ask questions of Professor Jeannie Constantinou, right? Not the relationship to the Constantinos that are here. I think this is another Constantino. All right. So, again, thanks, everybody. Marissa, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Certainly thank you to Chris and Chrysanthi for hosting us here at Peppermints. It's time now. Chris has been eagerly awaiting to sample the whiskey. He keeps looking over at me and going, lifting up a glass. So I'm gonna go over there and share a dram with him, and we will see you all next week, same time, same bat channel.